everyone, and welcome to the third episode of the Generation Liberty Forum. I am the National Manager of Generation Liberty, and today, again, I have four amazing campus coordinators. And what we will be discussing today is university. Is it worth going back? So let's get chatting and start some viral banter. First off, welcome to the show, a well-known freedom fighter and the libertarian that everyone wants to party with. His name is Chris Dekker. He is our campus coordinator at QUT. Hi, Chris.
Hi, how are you?
And I'm just letting everyone know that I'm very not used to calling Chris Dekker Chris, so I will be calling him Dekker throughout the show.
I don't think anyone is.
I know, I don't think anyone really feels right calling you Chris. But you may actually recognise Dekker from a not so long ago story about Generation Liberty getting banned from Market Day by the QUT Guild. What are your thoughts on that right now, Dekker? And also, even though it wasn't that long ago, doesn't it feel like ages ago now?
It's slowed down. So I think the last update we gave to IPA members was that we're taking the case to the Queensland Human Rights Commission. And because of course, I've been politically discriminated against. And at the moment, it's still sitting there. We've made some revisions to the applications. We've had an outpouring of support from members. So we've kind of updated our application to make it more salient. But because of the whole COVID restrictions, I'd imagine it's being held up right now. I'm pretty sure that we've surpassed the 28-day period in which they have to reply to us. So I'd imagine it's COVID holding them up.
So anyone who's not up to date, Christopher Dekker and Generation Liberty were banned from QUT Market Day by the QUT Guild, and we have lodged a complaint to the Queensland Human Rights Commission on the basis of political discrimination, and we've been waiting to hear from a reply from them, and the whole case is still open, but we will be fighting this really hardcore because we believe this is a representative of a bigger issue that's going on campus. But moving on, let's welcome our next guest to the show. He's another new guest, another new face. His name is Criostoir, and he is our campus coordinator at the wonderful Campion College. Hello, Criostoir, how are you going?
Hey, Renee, how are you? Good to be here.
So, your first time in your show, are you excited?
Oh, pumped as anything, Renee. Let's get keen.
Cool. And a regular on the show now, and also a regular on the Yippa podcast, Anjali, welcome back to the show.
Hi, how are you?
Anjali is our campus coordinator at Macquarie University, and we're very, very glad to have her back. And now our last guest on the show, another Queenslander. Mitchell Ablett-Nelson is our campus coordinator at the University of Queensland. Hi, Mitchell.
Hey, Renee. Great to be here and take part in the forum today.
Awesome. So, Mitchell, this is your first year being a campus coordinator, but in your first year, during your first semester, you managed to break the record for most sign-ups to Generation Liberty during O Week and during the first semester. You broke the over 60 number, which is crazy. What's your secret?
Without giving away too much, I'd just say an unwillingness to let anyone leave the tent without signing up. Can't go wrong.
And do you think that there's a hunger for these kind of ideas in Queensland amongst the young? And do you think maybe that the QUT ban on Dekker's campus may have actually helped you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's always a hunger, but I think events like the QUT ban or even the restrictions that are happening at the moment can really exacerbate that and introduce kids to ideas that they wouldn't have otherwise been, or open them up to the idea of getting involved in movements like Gen Lib.
Awesome. So, Dekker, Criostoir and Mitchell, this is your first time on the show. So I'm just checking in with everyone during this lockdown. So who are you locked down with? Where are you? And how are you? Let's start with Criostoir.
Well, Renee, I've actually, before the state went into I'm from New South Wales, so before a state went into the stage 3 lockdown, I had just finished. The day it went into a stage 3 lockdown, I had just finished my 14-day isolation. Was looking forward to be reintegrated into society and was given the bad news. So I was stuck in my western suburbs home for like the last 6 weeks, and I've just managed to sneak away quietly back home to my family's where I am now for Easter.
That's good. So why were you in the 14-day quarantine in the first place? Had you just returned from somewhere?
Well, no, I'd developed symptoms, so to speak, of the COVID-19 strand, and went to go get tested and was told to not come back to college and remain in 14-day isolation. So I did that, followed the procedures. Test came back negative, all good. I'm just great to be back out of it now, because that was an experience and a half.
And Mitchell, Queensland's restrictions seem to be not as harsh as some of its southern neighbours. How are you going up north?
Yeah, not too bad. I mean, I fortunately had a lease, or unfortunately, how you want to look at it, had a lease ending right as the restrictions came into place. So I'm safely back at home living with my family again. But interestingly enough, it kind of seems like there's a bit of growing resistance or pushback to the restrictions in Queensland. Particularly lots more people going around their days in the city at the moment. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
And Dekker, you are probably the most libertarian person I know. How are you feeling right now with the state flexing its muscles?
Look, I think that a lot of the powers that they're going to introduce are probably going to remain after this whole ordeal. Some of the initial things that we did, I mean, in closing down the borders, I probably have the most lax idea on what borders should be amongst IPA team, but even then, I still thought closing the borders was a great idea. If we could have done it sooner, that would have been better. I mean, but that's like 2020 hindsight, I guess. But some of the other things are a bit unnecessary, I think. I mean, like banning you from traveling in your car, just going for a drive somewhere, not being in contact with anyone else is pretty ridiculous. And on a more personal kind of selfish note, I'm kind of missing not going out. Yeah, look, I think I kind of agree with what Mitch was saying. It kind of scared me at first at how much everyone was like, oh yeah, I love these, what they were saying, I love the lockdowns, but they were saying, everybody needs to stay inside, dobbing in their neighbours to the government, basically calling for more of this stuff, which it wasn't encouraging. But now I think we're seeing more and more people going, this is ridiculous. Even when they're not going to work, inside my suburb, it's like it's a weekend every day. Like from the hours of 8 to 6, everyone, even though they can't go to a business and eat there, they're still walking around like it's a Saturday morning. So.
Yeah, I do have to say myself, I have always been someone who walks a lot. I always go for long walks. It's kind of how I process things. And also because I actually grew up without a car. So I have a very low carbon footprint, by the way. But I've noticed there's so many more people joining me for walks, so many more people out in the park. It almost, it feels like everyone's on break. It's really strange. But it all seems really up in the air right now about when these lockdowns are going to end. But it seems like education is one of the things that people want to open up as soon as possible. So there's lots of discussions about schools going back, and it kind of leads you to the thought that the next step after that may be universities going back. So Anjali, are you looking forward to going back on campus? And what is the thing that you've missed most about being kind of in person on campus rather than doing online classes?
Absolutely. I've really missed, I think, the social element, which is so core to university life. I'm really looking forward to just all of the interpersonal contact with my fellow colleagues and getting back into social events and extracurricular activities, because I've really been missing that, particularly law competitions, because I'm really involved in mooting and things, and it's not the same doing it online at the moment. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to just getting back into the swing of things.
Yeah, I totally understand that. I'm missing the social element of work. It's so strange not seeing the great IPA staff every day. And, you know, we Zoom and we're still in contact, but it's just not the same thing as seeing them in person. Um, but Chris Dekker, I think there is a bigger question here, which is it worth going back? Is higher education the same kind of investment that it used to be, especially in a post coronavirus world?
Yeah, I don't know, it's hard to say. I think that there's a growing amount of people who are unsatisfied with what Australian unis have to offer at the moment, but at the same time, it's like, if you want to get into a professional field, and first off, I fully back people exploring their options through TAFE, doing a trade. I can safely say all my mates who are finishing their Sparky apprenticeships started uni around the same time as me. They're all going to be running their business, earning lots and lots of money before I graduate. So, I recommend people doing that. But for people in professional fields, like, yes, I think a lot of university degrees, especially at the undergraduate level, are kind of being dumbed down or offer useless courses and subjects. But what's the alternative in Australia? I mean, like, I personally find my degrees kind of valuable. Like, I like my law degree at QUT, but some of these more obscure degrees, especially within humanities faculties, what use are they going to serve? And for people going into professional fields, what is your alternative? Because it seems like you need a degree to do something nowadays. But I can safely say, as someone who's really been only working, the full-time equivalent of a real job for, a year to 2 years, that I've learned more in that than, my 5 years of university education. So I don't know, like, yeah, the value's declined, but what's your alternative?
Mitchell, Dekker raises some really interesting points, but do you think there will be an increased rate of young people questioning their university degree right now? I can't help but think, with a lot of people at home self-educating, it may highlight the kind of uselessness of their degree, or maybe that it's not the right degree for them. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's not just that as well. I mean, there's an open question about whether the impacts of COVID will affect our economy's exposure to the need for professional services and new graduates in those areas, and whether there's a continuing value there. But another issue that universities are going to face is, if they're going towards an online model, one of the core things that will keep students coming back and maintain that enthusiasm for attendance is the face-to-face human contact with fellow students and teachers. And in the absence of that, they really don't have much of a competitive edge against online learning methods. But I mean, I would say that moving forward, on the other side of these restrictions, any competing service for universities would need to consider how to keep that integration of face-to-face contact. I really think it is crucial for human development, particularly for young minds when they're learning about what they want to do with their careers and their lives.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, because when I talk to all these young people and I say, what are you missing most about university? It all comes down to the face-to-face, day-to-day social interaction and meeting new people. So I think that is going to damage them. But Christo, you have a really unique perspective in this case, because you attend Campion College, which is a private liberal arts institution. Do you think moving forward that private colleges are going to play a bigger role going into the future?
I certainly hope so, Renee. I, for one, can only speak from experience, having attended one. I find it's more personal learning, it's more integrated learning, and as you said, it is a liberal arts college, and the specific education for a liberal arts degree is one of, like, the very definition of tertiary. Like, we have primary, secondary, and tertiary levels of education, and the tertiary level is supposed to, you're supposed to get an education for the sake of having an education, not just for like a single career path. Vocational education has really infiltrated the universities. I think they should stay out of there. Join TAFE. When I was at school, I never knew. I went to an independent private school, never knew anything about TAFE, wasn't even introduced to TAFE. The ATAR or VCE or whatever it's called in other states was made to be almost compulsory, even though it was an optional thing to have. No, but definitely private colleges promoting especially the liberal arts education for like a very well-rounded education that really forms the person and is really what education is all about.
Cool. So since we are talking about universities and their kind of ongoing relevance, I thought I would ask you all, what has been your biggest waste of time that you've had to suffer through whilst you're at university? It could be a class, it could be an online compulsory learning unit, it could be waiting 3 hours in line to get your university ID replaced, which I did in my second week at Sydney University and was a nightmare. So let's start with you, Dekker. Is there anything that you felt that you were like, why am I paying for this at university?
Yeah, so I mean, I mentioned in the last question that I found my law degree to be really well taught at QUT, but I can't really say the same of a lot of the business units. I had one in particular, I think it was called Working in Business, and it was essentially like a glorified, how to shake a hand like class. It was like, this is how business people act, this is how you work in teams, and introducing you to all these like obscure personality tests based on, like is that Myers-Briggs, INT-J, and all these, scores on which part of the team player you are here or there. And they're just so pointless. And it just felt like a giant fill, like $1,000 filler or more. It probably cost way more than that. Filler subject for my course. And it was just like, why try and teach these skills that are social skills that you need to learn in person? You can't. I think it goes back to what Krista was saying. Like, so many of these vocational subjects that just don't need to be in there. Like on-the-job training is on-the-job training. I don't think you should be learning the theory at uni. Personally, is what I think all you should be learning.
Oh yeah, I find it interesting that you bring up Myers-Briggs within that, and they taught you that, because I've heard before that it's been called the equivalent of horoscopes for business people, which I think is a pretty apt simile. Mitchell, what has been your biggest waste of time at university?
I mean, much like Chris, but I would say that bleeds into law subjects even. Intro law subjects that focus on intangible social ideals or the idea of social license to operate. I mean, it has some relevance, but at the end of the day, these are skills you're going to learn on the job. They're going to be contextually based, and it's very hard to teach students like stuff like that. It feels like it just sits there as a way to bridge the gap until the students get a bit older or a bit more experienced, or just to pad out the number of subjects needed at an introductory level.
And Anjali, what have you experienced? What has wasted your time the most, do you think?
I reckon as well, within my law subjects, there have been subjects I have taken which have been hijacked by an academic's own ideology or research or theoretical interest, and this provides no practical benefit at all. For example, they'll have us reading esoterical texts which have no bearing on black letter law, and I see no purpose for that in the practice of law. So that's certainly been something I felt has been quite wasteful of my time.
Yeah, and Crystal, you're the interesting perspective, because I've seen the Campion College curriculum and all of it looks fascinating. Has there been anything that wasted your time, or is Campion College that good?
Well, even I have to admit, not everything's that good. But I would say just one particular unit, just in philosophy. I was always struggled with philosophy. I mean, the Campion's liberal arts degree is a study of theology, philosophy, literature, and history, all integrated into one, with political philosophy, etc., and science as well. But there's this one unit called formal logic in philosophy, which is really just mathematics, and I was terrible at maths in high school, and I just don't want a bar of it. Anyway, I passed it. That's all I need to know. But anyway, yeah, that's my waste of time.
Moving on from that, Anjali, do you think that Australia is becoming over-credentialised? Statistics show that in 1989, not even 8% of people had a university degree, so it's about 7.9%, and now it's almost 30%. So what do you think about that?
I definitely agree that the spread of over-credentialism is definitely rife within Australia, not just in undergraduate degrees, but also postgraduate degrees, because we see a lot of students who are undertaking postgraduate degrees just to get that competitive edge in a very, what I would say, cutthroat and oversaturated market. And I partly believe that the uncapping of university seats, the progressive corporatization of our educational systems are part of the problem. But this also means that degrees and diplomas are consequently being devalued, and degrees are no longer really guaranteeing a job or better pay. And it's essentially a way for employees to just whittle down the pool of candidates. It's become a prerequisite for very mundane jobs where a degree would have no practicality for doing the job competently. So over-credentialism also means that students better suited to vocational qualifications are actually enrolling in inappropriate degrees with very poor graduate outcomes.
Yeah, I think you made some really strong points there, but also kind of moving on from that and building off that, Crystal, you've mentioned this earlier in the show, and Anjali kind of touched on it as well. Do you think that this current system, which seems to encourage university education above all other forms of training when, you know, young people are in year 11 and 12, is really what's best for young people?
Renee, honestly, I think that there has been a severe lack of awareness surrounding technical qualification and vocational education, especially, for example, again, as I mentioned earlier, in high school, I had never heard any mention of TAFE as even a possibility. In where I went to school, it was looked upon, like TAFE and other vocational education courses were looked upon as like, oh, if you go here if you couldn't make university. Like it was seen, there was always that sort of culture that I had in the schools. I think it's wrong to say everyone has to go to university. That just saturates, that's one of the things that's saturating the university market, if you will, and degrees are the inflation of degrees, so to speak. If everyone's going in there and you've got degrees for this, that, and the other, what was once, a bachelor's degree was worth like what a master's degree is worth now today. So no, definitely.
Yeah, I definitely think that is a concern that's worrying a lot of young people right now. And Dekker, what did you find when you were moving into year 11 and 12? Do you think that they only really showed you university as an option? And do you think that is what's best? Or was your high school a little bit better about giving other options?
Well, like I'd always kind of considered that I'd go into university, even from like the early stages of high school. But especially in my year, they didn't force it on people, but they encouraged it on people who, still could have been suited to university, but just didn't know what they want to do, or even if university was for them. So I can't recall if it was the year before me or the year after me. They had something like half the amount of people sitting the final test in Queensland that we did at my high school year level. So, and I heard just countless stories of people from my year level dropping out, halfway through the first year of uni. And I had the same, I faced the same kind of thoughts as they did. I nearly dropped out when all my friends were dropping out to go and do TAFE. Like I said before, I think that a lot of my friends who went to TAFE to go do their Sparky apprenticeship are going to do way better than me, possibly financially. So I think it's fast becoming a be-all and end-all solution for a lot of people. And I think that schools, careers counselors, whoever, are just making it such a procedural thing. Like it's like you're going through the motions. You go through high school and then you go to university and then you get a great job, and that's just how it is. And it's really not that way. I mean, you like take for most of the people in the IPA office, they all got to where they were from various diverse directions of getting there. I mean, you're a notable example. Yeah. It's not, I think that it's just the whole process of going from high school to uni has become such a, you just do it if you want to make money, and it's not any creative thought process to it. It's not, is this right for me? and it's kind of like expected. I've put all this time into it, give me a great job. And it's just not as simple as that, you know?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I also found when I was going through year 12, I knew what degree I wanted to do. I wanted to do visual arts and graphic design at a particular university. I'd selected my degree. I knew what courses I wanted to do, went into the careers office and said, these are the courses I wanted to do. I completed a subject the semester before, so I knew that I didn't have to do as many subjects this semester. So I was dropping mathematics because it wasn't relevant to what I wanted to do. And the career officer lost her mind and said, what if you decide if you want to become a teacher? Then you'll need maths. It was just, what if, so you need to do this particular subject. And I ended up doing maths, and even though I don't hate maths, it did make me much more miserable and much more busy for my last year, just on the off chance that I decided to do a slightly different university course. So yeah, I think a lot of what they're doing is just trying to get their numbers so high on, the entrance rate to university so that they get more enrollments the next year. But also looking at that, what kind of personality do you think that young people end university with is kind of interesting? And what kind of worldview do you think university gives most students? Anjali, what do you think, what kind of worldview do you think universities are trying to imbue in students these days?
I certainly think that universities are trying to, in some respects, broaden the horizons of students, allow them to critically think about issues affecting their society. But at the same time, we see a lot of what's happening at university is lecturers and conveners imposing their own particular worldviews or ideologies and perspectives upon students. And this causes students to have sort of a distorted or parochial view of their outer world as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think there's also a real underlying kind of nihilism, which I'm coming across a lot, which I think is really damaging. I think if anything we should be teaching young people is that they could do anything. But Mitchell, at your university, University of Queensland, there's been a bit of an uproar about new spyware that is going to be used during online exams. This is an evolving story and we don't know all the details yet, but could you explain what has happened so far and why students are concerned?
Yeah, so we definitely don't have all of the information, but it appears that the university is going to be asking students in various subjects to use this software. As a prerequisite to using it, you must hand over photo identification, so driver's license, passport, items like that. It will record you while you undertake your exam, so facial expression, audio, keystrokes on your computer. Looking away for a few seconds will be flagged as suspicious behaviour, and a remote invigilator will log in and monitor your actions directly. I guess the really worrying part about this is that the universities, after after financial census date, have told students that they will be required to use this, and the service provider reserves the right to sell your data, or may reserve the right to sell your data to someone of their choosing. UQ's response to student upset has basically been, well, you can book a room in a university library and you can do your exam there, but you must use the software. And I mean, I guess it's a bit interesting if they're saying, well, it's not safe for us to hold exams, but it is safe for you to come in on campus and hand over all your biometric data to this company. It's an interesting play by UQ, I must say.
Yeah, it's a very unusual story, and definitely something Generation Liberty is going to be keeping an eye on, because we know that we definitely value the privacy of students and making sure that young people are protected in that case, even from their university. But coming to the end of another great show, I would like to ask all of you what your advice for a year 11, 12 student who's listening out there. Would you tell them to go to university? Beginning with Anjali.
I think it definitely is a result of what that student wants to study, because I would say that for certain professions, you do need to go to university if you want to have those qualifications. What I think that high school students should really think about is what they want to do, and whether it's a more technical sort of degree they want to do, and not overlook the potentially lucrative careers that other vocational schools can offer, such as TAFE.
Cool. And Dekker, what do you think?
Not. I don't really have a creative answer. My answer is really just, if you don't know what you want to do, you don't have to decide now. I mean, I wish I took a gap year. It probably would have made my decision over what course I wanted to do. I changed multiple times during uni. It would have made that a bit easier. I didn't really have anything going on after high school, so it was pretty much just straight into uni. But I think if you can, just hang out with your friends, take a full-time or part-time job somewhere, getting some experience for, even if it's just a menial job for that year, and just maybe get some money together. I don't know, but see the world for yourself outside of school. See the world events around you. See what you like in the world, what inspires you, and what you enjoy doing. Because not everybody enjoys the job that they have to do, but how you can perhaps pair your interests with skills that you're good at. Because I went into university thinking, I'm going to choose the most lucrative career available to me, and I hated that course. And I'm glad that I switched, and I'm happy where I am now. I wish I just had more time.
I think that's really good advice. It's one of the things that really frustrates me. I come across young people all the time who say, well, I'm not sure what I'm going to do, so I'm just going to do a Bachelor of Arts because I can't think of anything else. It's like, take a gap, take a break, have a think, because starting that arts degree is still adding money to your HECS. It's still adding money to your debts. You need to think about that. Mitchell, what would your advice be to young people be?
I mean, to borrow on the government's language at the moment, university is non-essential learning. I mean, unless you have a clear path already and it requires going to university and you absolutely want to embark on this, what Chris said, take your time, work, even if it's a menial job, do something until you're sure that that's the path you want to take.
Excellent. And Criostoir, what is your advice from someone at a private college?
I'm going to say mine's going to be a little bit different from the other three. Certainly, if you're convinced that you're a pretty hands-on person, pretty practical, go into a trade, go into get a job, go to TAFE, do it. It's quite rewarding. But on top of that, call me a traditionalist, but if you're going to university just for getting a career, don't jump straight into it. But if you're doing it to get that tertiary level of education and are concerned with forming more than just your career, but your whole personhood, and have transferable skills. Yes, this might be a little bit of a plug, but Campion College might be located in Western Sydney, but it is majority of their students are interstate, and everyone from, I've met business people, I've met Forbes 500 businessmen who I've met personally and discussed a degree with, and they wished that they had something like this to study when they were thinking about their after school studies as well. So,
have you started a graduate role there? Is that why you're so?
Not at all. I just appreciate a good, valuable degree when I see one.
Well, thank you for that insight, Criostoir. I do have to say Campion is a beautiful place to get a higher education. I have been there myself. But thank you, everyone, for sharing your thoughts and coming on the show this week. Again, my name is Renee Gorman, and I am the National Manager of Generation Liberty, the fastest growing youth liberty movement in Australia. And I would love to thank Anjali, Dekker, Mitchell, and Criostoir for coming on this week. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Renee. Appreciate it.
Lovely talking.
And if you are not already a Generation Liberty member, make sure to become one. Go to generationliberty.org.au and become a member for only $10. You will get some awesome merch, including some of the badges that I'm wearing now, such as Make Orwell Fiction Again and Repeal 18C. Some great merch, but also books, awesome stickers. You'll get more than $10 value. You'll get updates on viral banter and all the great content we are putting out right now to make sure that liberty-loving young people have some stuff to do while we're all locked down. But until next week, stay safe, stay happy, and stay free. Bye.